Welcome in to the Illini Inquirer podcast live on YouTube. It is a late one here at State Farm Center as we just saw an NBA game break out at State Farm Center. And myself, as an NBA fan that enjoys great offense, I say that is a positive thing because this was a heck of a lot more entertaining than whatever happened at Maryland tonight. As Northwestern and Maryland got into a slugfest there. Northwestern wins, but Illinois plays a much different game in a shootout with Minnesota. Ton of offense, not a lot of effective defense, but Illinois finds a way to win 105-97 to keep a game lead over Northwestern for second place and set up what is a very meaningful game at Wisconsin on Saturday afternoon. But Derek, that was an enjoyable offensive performance from both these teams. As Terence Shannon, 29 points. Marcus Damask, phenomenal second half. He had 22 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists in this one. Coleman Hawkins, great first half, 15 points in the first half to get 20 for the night. And we got Dane Danger with a big performance off the bench with 11 points. But Dawson Garcia, 29 points. He was great, took it at Illinois' post players. And Cam Christie from Illinois looked as good as his brother, Max. He's been in the NBA for a couple years. Career high, 23 points, 17 in the first half, 6 of 9 from 3. Derek, just first thoughts on the first 100-point performance. You've looked this up for Illinois in regulation in a Big Ten game in 3 decades. Kawan Garrison, Deion Thomas, right? We're on that team.
That's right. TJ Wheeler also on that squad as well. So it's crazy because you have this dichotomy of unbelievable offense versus some pretty abysmal defense. Now, I'll give credit to Minnesota for making some tough shots. I didn't think Illinois made things exceptionally tough early, like Cam Christie coming off those screens and being able to knock down threes. Dawson Garcia one-on-one in the post. And so they kind of – there was a little bit of a snowball effect where you let some momentum from Minnesota early on really allow them to get comfortable offensively. So they were in the game, obviously, throughout most of it. And it took, similar to Iowa, a late stretch defensively with about 5-6 minutes left, get some stops and pull away and be able to get that thing done. So it's just crazy because Illinois offensively on paper, third in the country. This, if you look just at metrics, just at analytics, this is a more productive offense, points per possession, than the 2004-05 Illini team, which is thought of as one of the obviously best teams Illinois has ever put on the court. D. Brown, Darren Williams with their head, on and on. Defensively, they dropped from like 58th in Ken Palm defense to like 95th. So they're nearly falling out of the top 100. They've been falling like a rock really over the last 2 months. So give up 97 to Minnesota, a team that just scored 55 at Nebraska. That's hard to stomach. It's hard to stomach what Illinois is doing defensively, but yet the offense is just unbelievable. They create matchup issues for just about everybody. And Shannon had a bounce back as I thought he would. Coleman continues to play with good confidence. And not only, I know we're going to talk about it, but not only shooting it from 3, but doing some stuff off the bounce. And it's that interesting part of, is the defense enough to get them through in March, but the offense can score with anybody. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, here's from Isaac Trotter. If you're not watching on YouTube, if you're just listening on the podcast, best Big Ten offensive ratings in conference games during the Ken Palm era. Number 1, this year's 2024 Purdue team with Zach Edey, Lance Jones, Braden Smith. 2015 Wisconsin is number 2. Remember how great that offensive team was? Frank Kaminsky, Nigel Hayes, and Sam Decker. Number 3, the 2024 Illini with Shannon, Damask, and Hawkins. Number 4, that 2005 Illini team, D. Darren, and Luther. This is an unbelievable offense. And let's take a minute and talk about it, Derek, because first half, Coleman Hawkins off the bounce, phenomenal. Like, you're seeing him get into his bag a little bit more. I'm not seeing him in mock drafts enough yet, and I'm just seeing a game, Derek, that translates so well. And he's taken advantage the last 2 games of good matchups, right? Iowa, slow lumbering bigs. Minnesota, I mean, their bigs are really good. Dawson Garcia's not the most athletic guy. Pharrell Payne can vertical leap, but Coleman Hawkins is quicker than those guys. Not that Coleman's like the top tier quick athlete, but he's so smooth. He's good off the bounce, cut down on turnovers today, but he was great there. Terence Shannon was All-American Terence Shannon yet again, 29 points on 18 shots or something like that, 16 shots, 8 of 16 today, 4 of 8 from 3, got downhill in the second half. And then Marcus Damask had a bad first half, chasing Cam Christie, couldn't guard him. Offensively, only had 4 points on 4 shots. Second half, he was dominant. He really took advantage of those Minnesota guards, and they just had no answers. And it's all about matchups, Derek. Like Coleman Hawkins took advantage of his matchup. Terrence Shannon, Marcus Damask took advantage of their matchups. And it's not like I see people wanting like sets and doing these things. Why? When all you need is a good player that can beat a player who can't guard him. And that's what Illinois continues to do over and over again. So we'll get to the defensive side of this, but really no one has really been able to stop Illinois offensively. And that is a good thing going into the tournament. That is a thing that is going to help Illinois because last year towards the end of the season, this team was atrocious offensively. I know they were really starting to struggle defensively down the stretch too, but they couldn't get a bucket unless Matthew Meyer really got hot. So that is an encouraging part because there's some good defensive teams that aren't able to stop you right now.
100%. Yeah. And just not many teams are built like this where they have enough positional size to be able to not be exploited in matchups. Because even though Illinois is getting hurt by guard play a decent amount, those guards a lot of times stuck guarding Marcus Damask, Ty Rogers, somebody like that. Even we've seen Coleman Hawkins at times getting those matchups. And when they back you down and teams feel like they have to double a lot of times, then they leave open threes on the backside, which happened tonight, or Marcus Damask just goes to work like he did in the second half. So it's just a team that has schemed up this thing really, really well. It's not anything entirely complex in terms of actions or anything. They're just hunting matchups, and they're out booty ball Penn State last year. Like you look at they were a marvel in terms of the league last season. I know part of it's because it's Penn State and kind of came out of nowhere, so to speak. But I think that when you look at the metrics, Illinois is better offensively than a really, really good Penn State offense was last year. And then, like Isaac pointed out, I mean, it's historically one of the best on paper offenses that we've seen here over the last 2.5 decades. So,
can I give you a stat that blows my mind?
Yeah.
11 of the last 12 games, Illinois has scored 80-plus points. 10 of those 12, they've scored 85-plus. The one game they didn't, they beat Indiana 70-62. Ugly game. Indiana's pretty good defensively. They have positional size, right, at every position. But they still weren't able to score as much as you because they're not very good offensively. That's amazing.
No, it really is. Yeah, it's funny. I was laughing. I almost tweeted it. I didn't because we pretty much be poking fun at ourselves. But we could go back and find a summer podcast where we talk about this team having to rock fight their way through a lot of Big Ten games because they didn't have a point guard and they had some questionable three-point shooting. And now they're one of the best offenses that we've seen in 25 years. But at the same time, their defense is a shell of what we expected and what they were even earlier in the season. So this must be what – I tweeted this, though. This must be what Big 12 football looks like for those that watch on a regular basis. It's fun. It's entertaining. It does get frustrating because I think you know what this team could do if they were just average defensively. And it's not because they're athletically limited. It's some things that they need to clean up to make that run because you worry about them if they have an off night from Shannon or if they don't make threes or whatever it may be, or they just got outscored by a team that really maybe shouldn't beat them. Minnesota hasn't scored in the 90s all year long. I just said they scored 55 against Nebraska. Penn State had 48 at Nebraska, then hung 90 on you in State College. So there is a give and take here, but yes, the offense is special.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. But yes, let's get to the concern here because you needed your offense to have just 4 turnovers tonight. You needed your offense to shoot 61%, 10 of 22 from 3, get to the free throw line like you did. You needed them to do that because your defense couldn't get stops until that one stretch. I mean, how many kills do you think they had tonight? 1? Maybe 2? All in that final minutes, which was part of closing. They were able to get some stops at some points there in one key stretch. But even towards the end, I know Illinois kind of was just trying not to foul in the last 2 minutes, but Minnesota cut it to 6 there. You allowed Minnesota to shoot 14 of 20. Cam Christie hit some tough ones, but Mitchell was 4 of 4. Not a lot of teams are going to shoot that. So you were able to survive that. That's a kudos to your offense, but they just never looked uncomfortable. And teams look like they come into this confident now against Illinois and their defense. Like they know what they can attack. Right away, Garcia is going to work on Coleman Hawkins and Quincy Guerrier, and Cam Christie hits a 3 or 2, and you're like, oh, okay, here we go. And Illinois had no answer really most of the game, Derek. So why has this defense fallen off a cliff? Because you're right. I thought this team was going to win rock fights. I really did. I thought with the offense they had, we didn't know Marcus Domask could be this good in booty ball. We didn't think Coleman Hawkins would shoot 40% from three. We thought, can he shoot 32% from three? But Ty Rodgers, and what are they going to do offensively without a point guard? And can they do anything with ball screens? Well, they figured that offense out, but this defense still, I can't believe it's this bad.
Right. I do think that with the offense, it still gives you a higher ceiling than if they were a rock fight team. Like I think as far as the tournament goes, because you can outgun people and you need to score. Brad's continued to harp on that in the tournament. You have to score to be able to win in March, but to get enough stops, especially when you need them late in games and closing time and all that, or putting teams away, those are all big questions. I think as far as this game goes, I wondered, and I didn't love that, and Minnesota does put you in a little bit of a bind with this. I didn't love that Hawkins wasn't on Garcia to start, but then again, when he was, that was a post-up action. It shows that Coleman just has a hard time dealing with people inside. He's not exceptionally strong and doesn't provide a lot of rim protection, and that's just a kind of a weak spot that he has in his game. Outside of that, I mean, if he's defending in space and getting in passing lanes, active hands, swatting the ball away, I mean, he's exceptional. It's late, and I don't sleep anymore.
You don't sleep anymore with the baby, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. He does a lot of things really, really well defensively. That's one thing that is a weak spot. And but Quincy Garcia wasn't able to slow him down early. I think Quincy just is someone that just positioning wise, he bid on a fake from Garcia really early in the game, and Garcia gave him a look like, is that really how you're going to guard me? Like, this is going to be an easy night. And then Cam Christie coming off of screens, and with Illinois playing drop, and they chase over every screen. I know if you go under, you can kind of get buried, and that provides space too. But if you chase over it and you have drop, that shooter, that ball handler sees nothing but open space in front of him. So that's either a pull up shot, you got to recover well. I think Terence does that well. Outside of that, I think Ty doesn't do it all that great, and some other guys, Marcus tonight struggled, and also the mid range too. So in contrast to Nebraska, which I didn't know this until writing on my preview last night. Nebraska's been the number one defense since February 1st in the country. So chalk that up as something that you needed to know, I guess. But
I don't think of anybody but Juwan Gary as a good individual defender there.
Right. But I went back and watched that Minnesota game. Their effort, Nebraska flies around on defense. Now they doubled every post touch by Garcia. They just really got into Cam Christie and cut off his air, and just they recover and help out so well, and they're physical. Illinois doesn't. Number one, they don't fly around, and also I just think that their intensity lacks there sometimes as well. Brad, some of it, in my opinion, it's risk management, but also I think it's kind of stubbornness of not wanting to put an older team, a decently athletic team, in rotation. I get why they don't. Yeah. They don't want to go up threes. They don't want to get busted coverages more so than they've already had. But by not kind of playing a little bit in scramble mode, I think that they get caught on an island, and there's some noticeable – I think teams know where those weak spots are. They know help's not coming, and they can just take advantage of that.
Well, I get it. Like Iowa, I thought they did a pretty good job of sticking to what they do, and it ended up working in the end because in the second half – Iowa's shooting found water, which meant it regressed. Like that first half, they just kind of outshot the shot quality that they had. Today, Minnesota's still stepping into threes, still getting wide open threes. I just want to blitz some, double team Garcia, get the ball out of his hands in the second half. Just some change ups there. Like that's what I would like to see a little bit more, where you just get a couple different defensive looks, because other teams are doing what Illinois does, which is they're hunting out matchups. And if they're going to give Dawson Garcia against Coleman Hawkins in a post-up, they're going to do the same thing, booty ball. And we saw that happening tonight. And then this team cannot guard ball screens. In the drop, I'm just really shocked that they continue to have Coleman so deep in that drop. And I understand they don't want to get in rotations, but getting Coleman out there to make somebody uncomfortable, I think can be good. If if you can't rely on the rest of your guys to know that stuff, maybe that's where they're at right now. They just can't rely on those guys to do it. But it just, when teams continue to do this, it just at some point changing it up a little bit, like we saw against Maryland, I just feel like keeps teams on their toes a little bit and makes them uncomfortable for a couple possessions, where Minnesota, until that one stretch late in the second half, just never looked uncomfortable.
I don't know if you win that Maryland game without blitzing Jameer Young for a little bit of like a 4 or 5 minute stretch. So just doing something that a team maybe doesn't expect you to do, or just throwing something different, like you said, with the changeup, is super important. And I do have to point out, someone in the comments makes a good point. I mentioned they don't want to give up threes. They gave up quite a few threes tonight, 14 of them.
That's what I mean. Like against Iowa, you still didn't give up 3-point looks, right? Like they couldn't get any. They were 4 of 12 from 3. So now you're giving up 23s, and they're good look. Like Mitchell didn't miss a 3, 4 or 4, and they're all just corner looks.
Yep.
Hawkins deserves a lot of credit. He's a really good point guard. But Cam Christie is like those in ball screens. I mean, he made some good shots, but letting him feel good like that with the ball screen coverage was bothersome.
Yeah, I don't know why you don't vary it up a little bit. And I do think that they, as far as the Christie coverage, they did make it harder for him to get the ball in his hands. I noticeably knew late in the game, Harmon trying to really like front his catches. Terence was on him some in the second half too. So Christie, who had 17 and a half, I think he only had 6 in the second half, finished with 23. It was still a season high, but that was something that did change. But yes, in the ball screen, they've just gotten, like you said, they've gotten torched in ball screen coverage, whether it's a guard coming off, shooting the mid-range, a floater, going to the rim against Coleman. Sometimes guys just going through Coleman at the basket because, not the most physically imposing guy sitting back there and drop. So it's been something that teams can really exploit. I think also with the threes tonight off of second chance points, second chance leads to kickouts and some open threes, and then transition too. I think Illinois still gets lost in transition sometimes, and that's some stuff that needs to be worked on, and some of the correctable things. Some stuff in terms of some athletic limitations or just the way they're going to guard things. Some won't change, but I think that those are some certain things that can be tweaked and can be addressed, and to try to make some progress there.
It's after 11:30. We got 300 plus people in the live YouTube. We appreciate all you guys. Give us a like, subscribe to us, hit the notifications bell. If you got questions, send those in. If you got super chats, or we'll try to get to as many as we can before we get out of here, hopefully before midnight, so we can get home here. But here's Brad Underwood talking about the defense. I asked him his concerns about it.
The number 13 ranked team in the country with the number 3 offensive efficiency. Your defense fell in 95 tonight. How concerning is that, or do you need more balance there? Just what's your take?
Probably. There's no doubt. I'm not as worried about it when we're playing the number of possessions we're getting. It's kind of the old cliche. How do you move up in the net? How do you get in in Ken Palm? Well, you beat people by 100. It's offensive based. I think in the NCAA tournament, I think you got to be able to score. I think we have a lot of weapons to score. Do we need to be better defensively? Yes. And my problem defensively is some of the mistakes that we're making. And we've got to, those are allowing teams the good starts.
And I think he's referencing mistakes. He's talking about scouting report kind of errors. There were a couple threes that he yelled at, including one late in the game where it was 105 to 94, and I think they let a shooter step into a 3, and Brad was kind of irate about that, especially with their late game issues. I still think there's some schematic things they can do here, Derek. Just, again, some change-ups. But anything else we haven't covered about the defense?
No, not really. I think that, scheme with the ball screen stuff. It's also then just discipline and effort stuff too. I think getting back on defense, matching up, just kind of having an intensity and a physicality about you from the very jump. I thought they did a pretty good job of that early against Iowa, even when Iowa was scoring, like the way that Shannon was guarding Tony Perkins, the way that Marcus was fighting his butt off to make sure that Sanford didn't have good looks. Maybe tonight they could have given a little bit more effort there, but I think schematically is something that it doesn't explain all the issues for sure.
Right.
But I think when he also talks about some of the mistakes, it's just like jumping at a pump fake or fouling when a guy, like we were talking about earlier, some of Coleman's fouls are soft fouls. They're maybe scoring through him, plus he's giving up a foul. So I think there's a variety of issues that right now just lead to Illinois being far too easy to put points up against. But fortunately, and to Brad's point, like they can outgun you, and they're doing that to a lot of teams right now.
All right, Derek, we talked about Shannon, Damask, Hawkins, all over 20 points tonight, all Big Ten guys. But next on the scoring list, we can call him rotational player, Dane Danger, 11 points. It's a Big Ten high, 4 of 5 from the field, made all 3 of his free throws, and he had 6 rebounds. He's got 14 rebounds in 33 minutes during the last 2 games. 2 good matchups for him with Iowa and Minnesota, with 2 bigs. So I think he's a matchup play against bigger teams, but he is earning these minutes, Derek. Obviously, we know he can be good offensively. He finished unlike against Iowa. But the one thing I'm seeing out of him is he's getting to stay on the court and get into an offensive rhythm because he's giving something defensively and on the glass, most importantly. Like, there's just another intensity and effort there for him. But 3 of the last 5 games, he's played 13-plus minutes. Before that, he had 2 Big Ten games over the first, 15 that he played double-digit minutes. So what do you make of Dane Danger kind of breaking into a role here late in the season?
I agree with you. Activity on the glass, and I think he's been as engaged at the Iowa game, was as engaged as I can remember him playing defensively. Like some of his deflections, some of came over and swatted a shot and helped defense. He had another one of those tonight. I thought he was Illinois' toughest interior defender. Now he's the most physically strong. He's the biggest, so it makes sense. But especially against Pharrell Payne, if you weren't as familiar with him, like that dude's pretty strong and athletic. He's a good player, and then obviously they have Dawson Garcia as well to go with that. So we know what he's capable of offensively, like his footwork, ability to spin right hand, left hand. He can do all that stuff. Sometimes he gets himself in trouble trying to maybe overcomplicate it or make it a little too fancy or what have you. But I think that it is the offensive glass. It is the defense in terms of just being active and look, he's not going to be able to cover nearly as much ground as Coleman, but then matchups matter too. Now I do wonder, Wisconsin plays Crowell and Wall together. I know that's not really 2 5s, but Wall's a post guy for the most part, and maybe you put Coleman on him and would want some minutes with Dane and Crowell because I don't know that Crowell is going to guard him all that well if you get him in some one-on-one post touches.
Yeah, Crowell can stretch you out a little bit. I don't think he's shooting all that well this year. I have to go look at that, but he can be taken advantage of defensively with a guy like Dane. So yeah, I think there's a matchup there. Purdue, right? Like Drake Hoffman kind of went all over you. So maybe you can go a bigger lineup there. But with the way Quincy's struggling, man, there's minutes to be had. Quincy hit a couple big threes tonight. I'll give him that. 10 points, but only 3 rebounds in 25 minutes. Defensively, man, he's killing you. He's just not giving anything on that end. Had a terrible foul, just got caught in the air. I don't know what he was trying to do there, going for a block, but he's just not making the right plays defensively right now. So that gives Dane an opportunity, especially against these bigger teams that you're going up against. And kudos to him for making the most of it. That's been really impressive the last couple of games, getting Amani, Nico Moretti, and Dane Danger, who have been struggling to find minutes, but those guys were ready when their opportunity came. So that depth is going to play. And at some point in the NCAA tournament, probably going to need Dane Danger. Probably going to need some offense. Probably going to need some size. Coleman Hawkins probably will get in foul trouble. That's where that depth comes in, Derek.
100%. Yeah, and it's great to see the front court as far as the depth come along at the same time. Maybe it's not a coincidence. Maybe Amani's emergence pushed Dane a little bit and kind of was a message to him that, hey, if you don't pick it up, you might get buried on this bench with Amani taking some of these minutes. But then also, I got to give credit to Dane for not losing entire focus and keeping at it and being ready. And, his performance was huge against Iowa. And I think it was important tonight as well. So him going out there, it helps make Illinois a little bit more, I don't know if matchup proof is the right way, but just being versatile with the way they can match up with people. They can play with Coleman at the 5. If teams want to play a little bit smaller, they can play a bigger lineup if there's more size and you need that physicality, or you need maybe a just a way to get the ball to the paint, throwing the ball inside to him and know he can go to work and also hit the glass a little bit too. So I like the way that he's given that. I like the way that Amani's come on too. I know it wasn't his best night tonight, but he's been someone at least will bring the grit and physicality and effort on the glass too. So that's certainly good. And I mean, you usually get in a bind in postseason play for whatever reason, foul trouble, guy gets nicked up, somebody doesn't have it. And recently it's been Quincy that just, for whatever reason, hasn't really had it. And maybe that changed. I think it does need to change for Illinois to hit its ultimate ceiling, but it's good to have Dane coming on in the meantime.
Luke Goody, just 2 minutes today, bad matchup, right? And you saw it when he came in and he was guarding Dawson Garcia. It was just a bad matchup.
Yeah.
They'll need Luke Goody. They'll need Luke Goody at some point. Made a 3 today. Shot another one, missed it, but that was just a bad matchup for him. This, I'll throw at you too. 5 of the last 6 games, Terence Shannon scored 27-plus points there.
Unbelievable. I don't know how, with the stats, you can keep him off of any of these conversations as far as All-Americans and watch lists and whatnot, all Big Ten, first team. I know people have their own votes and can do what they want to do, but I mean, he's been dynamic and explosive. Is physically dominant out there. I mean, we talked about it before. I mean, Edey, with what he does inside, is easily the most physically dominant guy, but I would argue Terence in transition is probably a close second, and it's just so hard to deal with. And he made some threes tonight, and it's been something to watch. I mean, he's one of the best guys, the most talented players to ever suit up at Illinois. I think that's, and really on paper with what he's done this year, he belongs in the rafters. That's the basketball side of it. Obviously, there's more to it with what's going on off the court too. But Illinois needed this version to really regain who they were, pre-suspension, and he's lived up to it and has really been someone you don't want to see going into March.
Marcus Damas during Big Ten play, averaging 18.2 points per game. He's actually shooting 35% from 3 now during Big Ten play, which is kind of a surprising stat to me. And then Coleman Hawkins, averaging 14.6 points, 6.1 rebounds, 2.9 assists, a block a game, 2 steals a game, and shooting 40% from 3. All 3 of those guys are probably going to be on my top 10 of my all Big Ten voting. Terrence first team, Marcus and Coleman probably second team. Marcus has a case for first team. I just don't know if he'll get there based on some of the other players in the Big Ten. Those 3, man, like this is one of the better trios we've seen. I mean, we've seen Kofi, Io, and Trent here recently, but this one's up there, man. This is one of the more talented trios of seniors we've ever seen.
It's great to have a big 3. That's why they made as big of a deal about the one that went to Miami, the one that was in Boston. You could say Jordan, Pip, and Rodman were one. I'm not trying to say the same thing, but I know in previous years, kind of to what I'm getting at, there's been an obvious one, but Illinois hasn't had that. Who's the consistent 2 to like Malcolm Hill, or when Io's going, can Trent be a consistent 2? We've been in those spots. Sometimes Illinois has 2, and that third guy is not there to have.
A lot of times, like Malcolm Hill, I was like, man, he'd be a great number 2. Like that's Marcus Damas.
Right.
Like Marcus Damas and Malcolm Hill are kind of similar. You thought maybe if Kendrick Nunn wasn't kicked off the team, like those 2 that year could have been that, but the talent accrual is ridiculous, and the offensive system obviously is flourishing. We've talked about the defensive side of it, but that big 3, man, I don't remember the last time Illinois, because Kofi and Io were first and second team. I don't think Trent was. Trent and Kofi were first and second team. I don't know the last time they've had 3 guys that were all first and second team, probably 04-05, because they had 3 first teamers, right?
Yeah, that's unbelievable to think about. And just not only how good all 3 of those guys are collectively, but they complement each other so well. Like they fit together. One thing me and you have talked about for years, I feel like, how come Malcolm Hill, Kendrick Nunn, and Ravonte Rice, who on paper, just the thought of those 3 guys' individual talents couldn't be a supercharged trio for Illinois. It just didn't work. Yep. But this one really works. Like Coleman with the development of his 3-ball, with the way that Terrence gets downhill, the way that Marcus can pass, but also post up. Terence can shoot the three, when Marcus is posting, like those guys just all really fit well and can just kind of shift based on whatever angle they wanted to hit you with. So, I mean, Damas to go from the Valley to then in conference play, putting up like 18 a game and shooting those percentages, having started so slow from three too, that's encouraging that he's bounced back like that. And then Coleman, if you would have told us that, off season coming off of shooting 28, 29% from three, that he's going to shoot 40 plus in Big Ten. I mean, that's exactly what the NBA wants to see. And that's exactly what Illinois needs to really have the stretch big that kills you like that.
Oh, one last thing before we get to, or two last things before we get to what's ahead here, Derek. Just think of how good the offense could have been tonight if the defense would have gotten some stops and they got out in transition. Illinois had 1 point off turnover. Minnesota had 5. Every time Minnesota turned it over, Illinois had a bad possession, it felt like. And then Illinois just 6 fast break points tonight. So Minnesota was able to stop them from getting in transition because they didn't miss any shots barely. But that's the thing. Like this offense only gets better once you get a couple stops because you got that dude in transition with a bunch of other length and athleticism.
That's the other thing. Like as productive as Terence has been, if this team, which I ran in the stats, we already mentioned the overall season, Ken Pom, but Torvik since February 1st, Illinois is 263rd in defense. They're first in offense, by the way, first nationally in offense. So if their defense was better, their offense would only get better. Like they would be that much, because Illinois' Terence is his most effective self in the open court, more stops, more chances for him to get out and run. That part of it's kind of crazy too. If they could actually just piece together a little bit more defensively, their offense might be even more of a machine, which is crazy.
All right, I'll do my best Larry David impression here. Cam Christie, pretty good, pretty good. In-state kid, you and I were joking. Owen Freeman and Cam Christie, 2 Illinois kids. What was Brad Underwood thinking? Cam Christie was not he was highly recruited in the Big Ten, but like the big boys in the Big Ten, like Tom Izzo, didn't recruit him, right? Like he's turned into a heck of a player. Like I have a tough vote for freshman of the year. I mean, Owen Freeman's winning every Big Ten freshman of the week, but Cam Christie is just really coming on here late in the year. And that game looked as good as any game I can remember that Max had his freshman year. And Max was like the ballyhoo recruit of the two.
Right. Yeah. Max came here and struggled. I think he had 6 points on the game, and Cam had that as soon as he walked off the bus. Like he was just cooking, and like his threes were barely even, like a lot of them weren't even touching the rim. Like they were just splashing he's got a pure stroke. He's a really smooth offensive player. That was something that you could see as a high school prospect. Illinois for a while didn't offer, weren't really that involved. Then he really started coming on in his development at Rolling Meadows, and I think they offered during or after his junior year. We're involved with him some that summer, but his final AAU season ultimately didn't push the gas and really make an all-out type of you're a priority target for us type of push. And but you could say, like you mentioned, Michigan State had offered, but they didn't go in on him. Purdue had offered, didn't really go in on him. Ohio State on the line, but Minnesota and Iowa State.
Yeah, Iowa State and DePaul, right? Like,
yeah. Went after him. Minnesota, of course, not only prioritized him, but had a real chance for him to come in and play a lot as a freshman. So, but it is kind of crazy not to like knock DGL too much, but a guy that was formerly a top 50. I know he kind of fell towards the very end of his high school career in terms of where he landed, but DGL a lot more highly hyped as a prospect, obviously fighting it right now and not getting DMPs and whatnot. Different situations, of course. Not saying that DGL on Minnesota wouldn't be putting up numbers or that Cam would be here and starting and be Illinois' 3rd or 4th best player. He wouldn't. So, but man, he looks really good. He looks really, really good.
Yeah, and talk about bad preseason takes, but I mean, they were all real. Ben Johnson, man, what a year. What a bounce back year. I had left him for dead. Because there's no signs really the first 2 years, right? There were no signs of this, but Man, I mean, these guys have taken huge steps forward. You get a couple really good transfers in the backcourt, Hawkins and Mitchell, but Garcia's an all Big Ten, maybe second team player. Payne has really developed well, and then you had a guy like Cam Christie that can light it up. That team's just been competitive and spunky all year. When you look at some of the bottom teams in the Big Ten, like Maryland and Michigan, that have been Ohio State, that have been really disappointing. Kudos to Ben Johnson. He's earned another year, obviously, and maybe they're starting to build something there. So I think Hoiberg will win Big Ten Coach of the Year. I think he's deserving of that. But Ben Johnson's going to get a lot of votes for that too.
Yeah, they got some good pieces. Now, knowing the portal era, it's going to be hard to keep maybe some of them. I don't know. Not that saying they don't like it at Minnesota or anything, but, Dawson Garcia probably has another year, probably has a COVID year, right? And people may be banging on his door because, you can transfer a million times now in these days. So who knows with that? I don't know that, Cam would leave, but yeah, really good job to really get an entirely new backcourt, to bring in Elijah Hawkins, is one of the top assist guys in the country. Great speed. I know defensively he can be a little bit of a liability because of his lack of size, but great speed has really turned them up in transition, has turned them up off the bounce to feed other guys. And then Mike Mitchell Jr. from Pepperdine went in and shot the lights out today. Christie did too. So those guys can really be buckets. And then down low, yeah, they have a nice tandem of Garcia and Payne. It's been a good move to have Payne come along and play two bigs together. And Payne looks like a good, not a guy that, to my knowledge, was super hyped out of high school, and showed some flashes down the stretch of last year. Now as a sophomore, looks like a pretty darn good athlete and physical, and they could bring a lot of these guys back, if not, pretty much all of them, as far as their main five. So credit to Ben Johnson for not only just showing life, like they're a middle of the pack, decent Big Ten team.
They play hard, man. They play really hard. And that's noticeable compared to the rest of the Big Ten. Here we go, Derek. 3 games left for Illinois. They're 12-5 in the Big Ten, 21-7 overall. Still 2 games back of Purdue, but you go to Wisconsin, Derek. You win that, and you bring Purdue into town next week and Tuesday. So it's a quick turnaround there. And you have something to play for there. And then you make things interesting. I think Purdue has Michigan State this weekend, and then at home. And then who they wrap up with? Wisconsin.
Yep.
Yeah, Wisconsin at home. So they do play 3 tougher teams, as Illinois does here to end this stretch. Obviously, Illinois needs to win out to have any chance at a Big Ten championship share here. Most importantly, they have a 1-game lead on Northwestern, who won tonight, and then a 2-game lead on the double bye in the Big Ten. I think if they get one more win, it's going to be really hard to lose that double bye, because I don't see Wisconsin or Nebraska winning out here, or Michigan State winning out here. So here you go. 3 games left. What do you make of what's left for Illinois here?
Still a lot to play for. Of course, if it does become a situation where Michigan State or Wisconsin were to beat Purdue and you got them here in Champaign, then there's an enormous amount of stakes when you're talking about a Big Ten title. But I think realistically, or just more likely, Illinois trying to get a couple more quad 1 wins, 3 chances in your final 3 games to make a real push at a 3 seed. Going into the Big Ten tournament, I think you win 2 of the next 3, go to the Big Ten tournament, make it to at least Saturday, if not Sunday. I think that would really give you a legit chance. I mean, it would matter who some of those teams are in front of you that might, whether they go on runs in their conference tournaments or they fall. That would be something to really watch on the stretch. But for obvious reasons, a 3 seed, avoid that 1, avoid a 4 or 5, could put Illinois in a much better position to go on a run. But and then just to really limit the floor too. I think winning 1 of these next 3 probably prevents the slide to like a 6, I would imagine. So you'd probably be locked in that 4 or 5. So, but I think also then you're really just, it's about momentum too. It's about trying to play your best basketball at the right time, really getting tested, which you will. 2 tough road environments at Wisconsin, at Iowa City, and then playing the best of the Big Ten on your home floor. So a lot of fun matchups, and we'll see what Illinois is made of. Again, a team that blow for blow offensively I can't wait for that Purdue game, but the Wisconsin game will be a lot of fun too. Can they get stops against some of the better teams in the Big Ten? I think that's going to be really noticeable over the next 2 games in particular.
2 things. Just want to update some stats wise. Illinois 7-0 against quad 3 opponents after tonight. You avoided those bad losses, 5-0 against quad 4, so 12-0 against those. So you got no real big blemishes. Obviously, the home loss to Maryland, you're without Terence Shannon there, of course, but that's the worst loss on your resume right now, based on the quads here. So you avoided those, and now you have opportunities. This is, Derek, I think, where it's all about the eye test. These last 3 games. We know how good this offense is. I think it's going to be a problem for Wisconsin. I think it's going to be a problem for Iowa. But winning on the road at places like that, I think it's going to be really important. The quad wins are important, but I just think that's what NCAA tournament teams do. Pressure on, tough environments. You go win at places like that, especially with Wisconsin struggling like they are, right? And they've won their last 2 home games against Ohio State and Maryland, 2 teams not as good as you, but you're a more talented team. You're a better team than Wisconsin. So I think going and win there is huge. You set yourself up for a huge opportunity against Purdue. And that's the one, if you're able to beat that team, Derek, and all of a sudden you zoom out of the schedule and what they've done, like if you are able to win the next 3 games, I think, one, they're probably getting to a 3 seed. I think that's when we're starting to talk about that, depending on what happens in the Big Ten tournament. But then you'd be looking at, let's see here, 10 of the last 12 games you've won, and building that momentum and looking like a team that can make a run, because you're going to have to beat a team like Purdue at some point if you want to make an extended run. You're going to have to beat a team like Wisconsin in the first weekend as well. So I think that's where this next week is going to be really interesting.
Right. And Purdue's a win that isn't just a different echelon than what's currently on your resume, obviously. I mean, your best win right now is still Michigan State, who you saw that picture is middle of the pack in the Big Ten. And I know the metrics say that they're a top 20 to 25 team, and FAU doesn't look as good. I know we've been talking about that over the last month or so, but Purdue would be one of those elite quad 1A type of wins. I know it is on your home floor. It obviously would have been better if you beat them in Mackey, but nobody seems to be doing that. So you'll take one if you can get one on your home floor against them. And then a road win at Wisconsin, even though they've lost 6 of their last 8, went 2-6 in February. Still would be a nice win to get. Good battle of all Big Ten big guards as far as Shannon and AJ Storr. And then, of course, Wisconsin, similar to Illinois, has a lot of veteran pieces, older guys, Hepburn, Wall, Crowell, Klesmet. So that should be a good test. But, yeah, I agree. It's seeing where this team stacks up against some other, Wisconsin's a still 5 or 6 seed as of right now. Purdue, obviously, a 1 seed. And how that thing just continues to go. I know someone did bring up in the chat that, hey, if they go really hot, could they reach the 2 line as far as the NCAA tournament? It's possible. I mean, they'd have to.
If you won the Big Ten tournament, yeah, probably. If you won out, if you won 6 straight games here, yeah, I think they do, because that's kind of what the 21 team did. Is they just got on a hot streak and they got the 1 in that Big Ten tournament. Like, we were talking about them as a 2 line. Could they be a 1? Like, they just got so hot at the end of the year that they had 12 quad 1 wins. It was just ridiculous by the end of the year.
Yeah, and maybe even if you were to lose, say, either at Wisconsin or at Iowa, but you beat Purdue at home, you won the other one of those, and then you went into the Big Ten tournament and you maybe beat Wisconsin and then you beat Purdue again, that might put you in the 2 seed line. 5-1 or 6-0 could give you that potential. I mean, that's shooting for the sky here, but
we're just saying, like, there's things to play for, and this team is capable of doing it.
Right.
But they're 4-5 against quad 1 opponents. So this is their best opportunity to really help that resume when no one else besides those top 3 is like certain, it feels like, in those next seed lines, and everybody's got tough games here coming up. So do have a huge opportunity. Let's get to a few of the comments here before we get out of here, Derek. Michael says, Terence going over 1,000 points tonight as an Illini, not been mentioned. That's really impressive for 2 years. Has he really scored that many points in an Illini uniform? I don't think so.
That seems like too many.
Let me look that up, because that's it. But this kind of just goes into he is one of the top 3 Illini.
Well, no, he has.
Is he really? That's insane.
534 last year. If ESPN's updated, 453 this year. That must be before tonight. Yeah.
That's insane. He's one of the best 3 Illini we've covered.
It's crazy. Yeah, he is for sure. No
Yeah,
doubt.
for
I
sure.
mean,
Like,
he's two
and
first team All-Americans, and he'd be that if he played a full season. Just on paper, he's that.
Mike, I didn't mean to doubt you there. It's just like I was trying to do the math in my head. It's like, yeah, he has scored that many points. And when you average close to 20 points a game, you certainly get in that echelon. I've talked to a couple all Big Ten voters, said they're voting for him. Like, I think that's going to be the attitude of a lot of all Big Ten voters. Now, the All-American, it might be different. I don't know whether they vote for that or not. He hasn't been on some of these lists. I think that should change. But listen, I can't be a judge of a criminal case. Like, my job is to vote for the basketball. And right now, it's unquestionably. I mean, you can make an argument, boo-booey over Terence Shannon if you want to, and your Big Ten Player of the Year. But Terence Shannon's the top 2 player in the Big Ten.
Easily. And I dare anybody to name 5 other players that are better than him nationally. Now, you got some good ones on that national landscape, but as far as guys you wouldn't want to see in the tournament, I think it's a short list of company in terms of him being on that same type of a tier. Edie's in there, of course. He's on that list. I think that I know Jamal Shedd's played really, really well for Houston. There's been some guys.
Dalton Connect
for sure. Dickinson could be one of those guys. Kansas might need him to be. He hasn't had that type of year, I don't think.
Like Kevin McCullough, I know he plays for Kansas. I'd take Terence Shannon.
Yeah. I mean, he outdueled him when they played in a game that didn't matter, but it was it battled out like a real game, obviously.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Tyler Kolek, I probably wouldn't want to see in the tournament either. But and just UConn. UConn's not really one player. But
here's my thing. He should be on, like, there's no reason he shouldn't be on a third team or a second team.
Oh,
like,
I think second team is the bar.
Yeah, like Tristan Newton's probably going to get votes because he's on UConn. Kyle Filipowski, RJ Davis because he's on North Carolina. All those guys, like Johnny Broom's a really good player at Auburn. All those guys deserve credit. And I don't watch enough college basketball to separate who's 1 through 15, but he needs to be in that 1 through 15 because it's just we're voting on basketball here. And he's on that. He should be.
No doubt.
All right. Let's go. Anything else here? Let me get through these. Winning the next 2, Divine says, could be so pivotal. Yeah, if you win the next 2 and you head to Iowa with at least thought that, hey, Wisconsin help us a little bit, like Nebraska helped us a couple of years ago.
If Nebraska can go to the Kohl Center without one of the McGowan's brothers, and then Verge he got in foul trouble, right? Like he was going off, and then he got like 4 fouls early in the second half, and they still win. Anything can happen on the last day. Anything.
Yeah. I think we're good here. It's a late night. We appreciate all you guys for watching the Illini Inquirer podcast live on YouTube. More than 350 of you, 400 at one point. Hit that like button on your way out. Subscribe to us. Hit the notifications bell as well. We'll have plenty. Joey Wagner was at the Combine today. We gave him the night off from the game because he's been doing work out there. Also did a great column on Caitlin Clark when he went to Iowa City for the Illini women's basketball game. But he'll have something on Keith Randolph tomorrow. He's already got something up on Johnny Newton. And he caught up with one of my favorites, Dane Brugler from The Athletic. Been reading a lot about from him, Derek, because of the Bears' high draft picks here. So no breaking news yet. We haven't broken your Justin
going around about Chicago or anything.
We haven't broken your Justin Fields heart yet.
You know what? It's fine. I'll be okay.
I think
it'll happen. Peter King gave his opinion. But I appreciated that, even though he then came out and said it was not sourced. It was just kind of his opinion. But
I love Peter King's sloppily written opinion.
Yeah.
When he said that, but I think we're getting a different quarterback, and I wish Justin Fields all the luck. I'll root for him when he's not playing the Bears. But here's the thing, Derek. I have confidence in Ryan Poles. Like he seems very competent.
Yeah.
Compared to my other fandoms in Chicago, sports organizations. He just set us up for something good here. So hopefully he makes the most of it.
Yeah. I mean, he gave himself the opportunity to make this power move with the Carolina pick. He nailed that. And look, he was in the room with the organization that took Mahomes. I know that would have given maybe a little bit more credit if he was in the Bears spot and had to then pass on Trubisky and Watson and took Mahomes instead. But they do know what that looks like.
He did pass up on Watson.
Yeah, I am hesitant a little bit because I think the Mahomes comps gets thrown around a little too much. Even
Too
though
much.
Like stylistically, I get it.
All right, can we go here? Like the Mahomes comps are kind of ridiculous because he might be the best ever. Like no offense to Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers, is that a step below?
I mean,
he actually reminds me a little bit of him.
It is a step below. And then, yeah, I mean, Rodgers on the off-script stuff, extending plays, quick
I don't
arm
know if he's
release
going to be that.
I
don't know if Caleb's going to be that, but like I've watched enough Caleb to be like, that guy is different. Like he's really
talented.
He's going to have a lot of things he needs to fix, but I think he's going to be set up better for the Bears, which is weird for me to say, if he's that pick. Or if Washington wants to throw a bunch at you and you like Drake May just as much, I'll go with Drake May. Not as much of a Jaden Daniels guy. Maybe that'll look bad in 5 years, but Drake May's got some Herbert to him. So either way, it's going to be an exciting time to be a Bears fan. Just hopefully we don't screw this up too much. But I have confidence. Like I'm a little bit more confident in this regime doing the right thing, but I kind of like that we might swing for the fences for a quarterback, Derek. Even though we got a solid one, I just don't think he's shown that he's definitely that caliber of quarterback. So if you got a chance at a guy like this, I'm all for it. But then go get him another wide receiver. Go get me. I go get Marvin Harrison Jr. and give up a bunch for him. Just get both of them while you're at.
I know. The Fields thing
or
hurts
Roma
my heart.
Dunze, I'm fine with him.
It hurts my heart, but if
I had a Jay Cutler jersey. I was all about him.
I get it.
I realized he's fine. He's middle tier.
He's fine. I would have taken Jay Cutler on a lot of these recent teams.
That's right.
But anyway, Joey Wagner needs to share the good quarterback juju. Whatever it is, Jordan Love looking like he's really good. Like, what's up? Just give us one. I don't care what the name is on the jersey or anything. As long as they come up and produce, I'm good.
Like I was talking to a Minnesota Vikings fan tonight, and they're like, "Yeah, do we keep Kirk Cousins?" I'm like, "He'd be the best quarterback we've ever had." By far, he'd be the best quarterback we've ever had. Yeah. All right, I'll wrap it up for us. I'll have plenty of draft thoughts. It's just consuming my mind here as we get closer and closer. But big week for some guys at the scouting combine. We'll catch up with a couple more of them at the combine. They got the pro day next week as well. Everybody have a great night. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.